when you think about the differences between Europe and the United States, it's a fascinating thing. We're similar societies. We're rich, we're Christian, we're capitalist, we're really into our freedom. And what is the difference? Europe is passionate about its government by, for, and of the people, and we're passionate about government by, for, and of the people. The difference, I think, is we are government by, for, and of the people via the corporations we own. It's not a good or a bad thing, it's just we have a government that creates a good business environment so we can prosper. And I'll tell you, I'm thankful I'm running my business here in the United States and not in Europe. It would be demoralizing for me to run my business in Europe. I like our environment for guerrilla entrepreneurial, business. In Europe, they have government by, for, and of the people in spite of what's good for the corporations that they own. Because they're more interested in sustainability and economic justice and all that kind of stuff. In Europe, you'd be much more likely to see a law that requires you to pay for the disposal of your car when you buy it. That would never happen here because that would be bad for business. But maybe that's honest for accounting and good for sustainability of the environment. That would be a European-style law. When you want to see Europe in the extreme, you go to Scandinavia. Scandinavia is the most highly taxed, most socialistic part of Europe. I'm going to be like 7 minutes, and then we'll go, okay? Scandinavia is the most, when Americans are threatened by Europe, Scandinavia is what really gives them nightmares. In Scandinavia, you have the most highly taxed part of Europe, and when you go to the main square, you don't see a church, you see a city hall. And it's like, it's the religion of humanism. You have a city hall with a big nave and a lectern instead of a pulpit, and murals behind the pulpit that celebrate not Bible stories, but heroic individuals who contributed mightily to their society. That's humanism, you see. These are the least church-going people in Europe, the most highly taxed people in Europe, and by every measure, every time they have a tally on who are the most content people on the planet, you see those Scandinavians up there, okay? So, is it right or wrong? I don't know, but they like it. And they have high expectations for the taxes that they pay. But that's the city hall in Oslo, right in the main square. This is my friend Ollie. He's a school teacher in Switzerland. He's one of my sounding boards in Europe. And I love to hang out with Ollie. I go hiking with him, and I hang out with his family. A little while ago, I asked him, just to try to figure out how they think, Ollie, how can you Swiss people so docilely pay such high taxes? And without missing a beat, he said, well, what's it worth to live in a country where there's no homelessness, no hunger, and where everybody, regardless of the economic status of their parents, every child gets access to quality health care and education. He's not a crusader, he's not a liberal, that's just the ethic of Europe. They've got a higher threshold of decency there, and it doesn't threaten their capitalistic work-hard sort of system. They just don't want desperate people living in tents across the street. So, we can look at that and we can learn from it. One thing Americans are not very good at, we are compassionate people. There's no doubt about it, we're good people. But we're not very good at dealing with the gap between the haves and the have-nots. We find a way to be oblivious to it. And when you travel, you have it in your face. You have those dirty little fingers coming through your window when you roll it down. And you can't travel in an honest way without understanding that half of humanity, 3 billion people, are trying to live on $2 or $3 a day. There's a huge gap between rich and poor. A full billion people are trying to live on $1 a day. I want to know about that. I want to study that. I want to gain an appreciation for that. And I've learned, after lots of traveling in those parts of the world, that even if you're motivated only by greed, if you know what's good for you, you don't want to be filthy rich in a desperately poor world. It's not a good place to raise your kids. Here in a middle-class neighborhood in San Salvador, everybody teams up and hires an armed guard to stand on every corner. You just don't live in a middle-class neighborhood without armed guards. When I doze off on my tour bus in Central America, if I hit speed bumps, I know if I open my eyes and look over there, I'm going to see the home of a rich person. You don't build a mansion without putting in speed bumps, so angry poor people have to slow down before throwing something explosive into your garden. I don't want to live behind designer fortifications. This is a little microcosm, but it can be as a society in general. Europeans tell me the hottest thing in real estate in our society is prisons for the poor and gated communities for the rich. I'm not sure if that's right, but it's not a very good situation if it is. And when I travel, I realize that these little girls are just as precious as my little girl. My little girl's got $5,000 for straight teeth and money left over for whitener. I noticed every little kid in her classroom apparently had the wherewithal to scrape together $5,000 for braces because they all got braces. And then, I realized these little girls are living on a garbage dump and they don't have water. Their moms are gone half their waking hours just walking for water and firewood. And it gets worse every year. Now, it's not, my girl gets braces. I'm in a winning system. I work hard. My girl gets braces. But that doesn't get me off the hook from recognizing that for the cost of 2 sets of braces, you could build a well in this village, and those girls could have mothers that stay home and nourish them and raise them, and they would have running water. It's not a guilt trip to acknowledge how wealthy and blessed we are. It's an opportunity. And I'll tell you, we've got enough power on this planet to really wage a lot of soft power. For the cost of 2 sets of braces to build a well, then every time people go to that well and pump that handle, they'll think America as they get their water. That's good for national security. Not to mention it's good from just a compassion and a decency point of view. We've got some exciting challenges, some really unprecedented challenges facing us. We've got this violent, Islam that we've got to deal with. We've got a horrible gap between the haves and the have-nots on this planet. Got global warming, lots of other stuff. And when we travel, we gain a broader perspective to come home and deal with that. Everybody is going to deal with these challenges in a different way, depending on their life's story. What's different about mine is I've traveled a lot. The value of travel is nothing new. 1,500 years ago, Muhammad said, don't tell me how educated you are, tell me how much you've traveled. Thomas Jefferson traveled, and he wrote that travel makes a person wiser, if less happy. Mark Twain traveled, and I love his famous quote. He said, travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. I've traveled, and it's so exciting to just gain an empathy for people outside of our country. I'll never forget in a park in Oslo on my very first trip. My parents were just loving me. I remember from my little teeny bopper point of view, my parents were just like unreasonably loving to me. And I looked out over that park and it was just speckled with parents loving their children the same way. And it occurred to me, wow, this world is filled with equally lovable little children of God. Let me just finish with kind of an image. It's one of my favorite activities as a tour guide. I love to expose my travelers to an understanding of another religion, another culture. We're in Eastern Turkey, and we want to get to know whirling dervish, those monks that whirl around in cruise ship entertainment evenings. And we're going to go up on his roof. The sun was going to go down. He was going to pray, and we're going to watch him get dizzy. And he said, I'm not a photo op. You can come up here and watch me pray, but you're going to understand what I'm doing. I said, that's cool. I had 20 Americans with me on my tour. And I'll just paraphrase what he said. He said, I'm a dervish. That's like a monk that follows Mevlana, who's kind of the St. Francis of Islam, sort of a prophet of love. And I go up on my rooftop 5 times a day, and I get into a meditative trance, and I spin around. And I think about God, and I think about my faith, and I think about my community and this great creation. And he says, when I worship, I plant 1 foot in my community, the other foot goes around, acknowledging God's great creation and all of its diversity. And I whirl around like this, thinking about my home, my family, and the diversity on this planet. One arm goes up to my Creator to accept His love. The other hand goes down like the spout on a tea kettle, showering God's love onto His creation. And I whirl around, and I lose myself in that thought. And he goes around. I'm just sitting there with the sun going down and all of my tour members watching this guy, and his robe billows out, his head tilts over, he gets into this beautiful meditative trance, thinking about God's love and His creation. And I look at him and I go, whoa, that guy is different than me, but he's really fundamentally the same. And now I better understand him, and I can go home and not be afraid of him. And it occurs to me that's the most precious souvenir, is to go home with a broader perspective, being more comfortable in this planet. And then, if I take that broader perspective and I put it to work as a citizen of this great and powerful nation, that's making travel a political act, and I think that is a very constructive thing. I have enjoyed my quick visit to this beautiful campus, met a lot of nice people. I thank you for coming out tonight and sharing, letting me share all these ideas with you. I wish you happy travels, okay? Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Very nice to be here.